International from Mumbai. Rohit has over 27 years of industry experience in governance, risk and compliance, in business continuity management, IT disaster recovery, crisis management, operations risk management, vendor BCM risk management, information risk management, corporate security, and health and safety and auditing. A career spanning with IBM, Barclays Bank, Deutsche Bank, and KPMG. Rohit is a guest faculty with prominent institutes, bodies, BCM, and risk management. He is an author of the Emergency Management Handbook. Today, Rohit is going to speak about designing an effective crisis management framework. Rohit Verma, the virtual stage is all yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Elizabeth. You're all able to hear me?
Yes,
we can hear you.
We cannot see.
All right. Yes, I've kept the video off just to avoid any bandwidth issues, so my apologies for that.
Fair enough.
If I may be allowed to share my screen, I can start the presentation.
Mr. Rohit, you want me to stop the presentation and you want to present yourself?
I'm okay if you want to run the presentation, that's fine.
Okay.
All right. So while I understand the whole day we have been discussing on the business continuity and crisis management, I thought I'll touch upon a few points and I'll try to avoid any repetition of the points that have already been discussed. Just to touch upon a few points, so what we'll be covering in this very short session, in interest of time, is what a good crisis management framework looks like. What should go into a design of a command and control room? What does a good crisis communication plan look like, and what are the external agencies we need to coordinate and work with in case of crisis events? So if we move to the next slide, while I was making a presentation for Elvin, I realized that the Murphy's laws typically apply to business continuity and crisis situations. And if you look at some of the Murphy's laws very quickly, if we move to the next slide, if anything can go wrong, it will. And if you just keep moving quickly on the slides, nothing is ever as simple as it seems. Everything takes longer than you expect. Left to themselves, all things go from bad to worse. If anything simply cannot go wrong, it will anyway. And finally, this one: if everything seems to be going well, you have obviously overlooked something. So this basically is just a typical day job of a person who is dealing with crisis situations. And the worried looking man that you see in the diagram is me. It is you who are dealing with the crisis situations on a daily basis. And you always wonder that when there are crisis management plans in place, there is crisis management framework in place, then why is it that crisis happens and in organizations face new situations, and there are always new learnings? And that's what crisis management and being prepared to face any crisis is all about. A crisis never gives any opportunity. It never gives any appointment. It never gives any opportunity or intimation that it is coming. It just presents itself to you, and you just have to respond to the situation. And what makes a difference when you respond to a situation and when you react to a situation is the same difference whether you survive a crisis situation or you do not survive. When you respond to a situation, you take the right steps, you take the right decisions, and you see the crisis through. But if you react to a situation, it leads to incorrect steps, incorrect communications, and sometimes it also leads to a bigger crisis than the existing crisis that it began with. So what is important is we respond to a situation and not react to a situation. And what will make us capable of responding is our planning. So crisis management planning, the planning for being able to foresee some of the things that others have not foreseen is all the creativity and intelligence of a crisis manager. If you look at this question that had come, this was actually an interview which was there. of a very famous event, and the person was being interviewed. The question was, sir, how prepared are you for a disaster? And the response given was, what disaster? I have not come across any disaster in my such a long period of service. And this incident was, the interview was the event of sailing of Titanic. And just before the Titanic, set sail, this was the interview which was taken by the media, and it was taken with the captain. And this was a response given by the captain. And we all know what happened with Titanic. Right? It was said to be a ship which will never sink, but then the reality was different. If we move to the next slide, please. It all says that where are we in terms of crisis, how good we manage the situation. So what are the risks that we face today? In natural incidents, natural disasters, floods, earthquakes, tsunamis, landslides, cyclones, all of those are a routine. Terrorist attacks, power grid failures, infrastructure failures, all of those also are part of our daily corporate life, and we manage those situations on day-to-day basis. So if you look at the next slide and we see what are the hazards or the risks that typically face, we face. If you look at external events or internal events, what is essential is that it is not possible to prepare and deal with it's not possible to prepare for each and every crisis situation. But at a large event, in a large planning scenario, if you are able to respond to a situation successfully, that is what crisis management is all about. And in terms of the time and impact relationship, if we look at the next slide, the sooner we respond to a crisis event, the lesser is the damage, the lesser is the impact. And the longer it takes to respond to a crisis event, the bigger is the impact. And the biggest impact is the reputation impact if the organization is not able to come out of the crisis situation in a reasonably well-defined time. So what would be a good crisis management framework? Crisis teams would define the roles and responsibilities. What is the crisis structure? Who are the key people who need to come together when there is a crisis situation? What does the command and control look like? What is the equipment which goes into a command and control room? What is the standing agenda? Standing agenda would be something which is defined for any crisis event. And typically the top priority is the life safety, the building, the facilities come next, the business operations, and thereafter the other agenda in terms of the business impact. But life safety is always first when we talk about crisis situations. There are crisis cards for quick communication in case of crisis situation, so people are able to connect, and there are various levels of crisis hierarchy, and you need to connect and coordinate with different teams. Notification technology, there are various notification technologies available in the industry today. And the sooner we communicate about a crisis and people are made to respond to a situation, the better is the management of the event. A crisis communication plan, whom do we communicate, how do we communicate, how soon we communicate, who are the key stakeholders, all of that would go into a crisis communication plan. And then it will be good if we can do some crisis simulation exercises which bring out any vulnerabilities in our plans, in our framework. The crisis exercises would help us to identify what are the actual weaknesses in a crisis framework, such that if there is a real crisis, we are ready. And then the framework would also cover what are the external agencies that typically would be followed, with whom we will coordinate. Yeah. So so on. If you can go to the next slide, we have moved ahead. Yeah, we have covered this. Yeah. Yeah, we have covered this. So now moving ahead from the crisis management framework, the command and control room on the next slide, typically would go into designing the command and control as to location, whether it's a physical command and control room or it can be virtual. And COVID has proved that the whole world has worked on a virtual basis. So the command and control room can be virtual as well. And the typical equipment that would go into a command and control room would be something specific to the organization or to the industry. But typically it would be what you see on the screen in terms of the basic infrastructure, the communication, the network, the video conferencing, some ability to collaborate with each other, with the crisis management teams, with the global outage management teams, with the business teams, business continuity teams, with the incident management teams. As long as we have some basic communication capability, which is available in the virtual command and control room or in the physical one, I think we will be able to manage the situation. So the basic equipment that would go into the command and control room would be things like landlines, phones, video conferencing, audio collaboration, minimum 2 desktops with internet and internet connection, and a few other things as well in terms of maps, whiteboard, world clocks to see what are the time zones that we are dealing with. Coming very quickly on the crisis communication options. Now, on the next slide, please. Yeah. So if you look at the crisis communication tools, we have various. If we can come to the next slide, please. Yeah, after the this one, crisis communication tools. Yeah. So if you look at the various crisis communication tools that we have, which most organizations use, email can be Outlook, Lotus Notes. The way there are various collaborative tools like Microsoft Teams, WebEx, Zoom, etc. Then there is basic telephony, and there are emergency notifications which are there in the industry. And if we map what are the functionalities available in each of these tools, so email will have the email inbox, the outbox, the storage, the file sharing, the audit logs, and all of that. Some of these tools will give the functionality of the audio one-to-one or audio one-to-many conference facility. There will be a video collaboration possible. Some tools may have functionality of chat or an SMS, which is text-based. It can be, system-based pushed, or it can be interactive between individuals and resources. There can be functionality of file sharing. But when we use all of these communication tools, which are there largely in all organizations, and we map the tools with their functionalities, what needs to be brought out in terms of our study is what are these tools actually dependent on? We use them very comfortably, but have we given a thought of what are these dependent on? So if we are using various tools which are depending on third party, if they are dependent on internet, if they are dependent on Active Directory of the organization, if they are dependent on the DNS services of the organization, then how good and strong are these core infrastructures in terms of internet, Active Directory, DNS, network? How good is the third party's business continuity preparation such that if they are impacted, it does not lead to an impact to our organization? And what will happen if these functionalities are lost simultaneously, such that you are lost without any basic communication capability? You're not able to do any audio and video collaboration. What will happen if these tools are down? And if collectively 1 or 2 tools are down such that it takes away all of your basic email, audio and video collaboration and communication, then how will the crisis management team communicate internally? How will they communicate to the end users? How will they communicate to the stakeholders? All of this is something that we need to think about when we talk of crisis communications. And this is what a good crisis communication plan will bring out. So while we use all of these tools, it is extremely important we recognize the underlying core IT infrastructure that enables and facilitates delivery of these tools and functionalities. And any weakness in that underlying IT infrastructure can lead to a direct impact to the usage of these tools. Coming lastly, in terms of the external agencies, there are various agencies that we deal with, and all of these would be part of the crisis situation when you're dealing with different emergencies. So it could be fire, flood, earthquake, terrorist activities, bomb threats, all of that. And depending on the situation, we'll have to work with different external agencies. Essentially, to wrap it up, these are the typical things that would go into a crisis management framework. But again, it would depend upon the organization, the industry, and the nature of the size and nature of the operations, which would define what would go into an effective design of a crisis management plan. Few suggested readings. These are excellent sources of information. A wealth of information is available. One can go through these suggested readings, books, and websites. Towards the end, as there is a famous saying, the only thing harder than planning for an emergency is explaining why we didn't. So crisis management is all about being ready, all about having the visibility, having the creative capability to visualize and prepare for an event which others may not recognize. But as crisis managers, it's important that we recognize them and be prepared for them. That's all I had to share in limited time available. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take. Thank you.
Elijah?
Mr. Rohit, there is a question from Mr. Ankit Raj. Due to this panic condition, can we stand for private sector?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Can you elaborate?
I'll repeat the question. Mr. Ankit Raj is asking, due to this panic condition, can we stand for private sector? It's a little confusing question. I'll just read.
I think the question has not been drafted properly, so some words are missing. So I'm not able to understand the question.
Due to this panic condition, can we stand for private sector?
Yeah, that can we stand. I think some words are missing from the question. So if Ankit can read off the question